1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi there, my name is Scott Tulk. I'm the Manager of Digital Transformation, Architecture and Planning, and I'm here to tell you more about the city's website redesign.
Welcome back to Tell Me More, the podcast that knows the user experience matters. I'm your host, Autumn Hume, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into the city's website redesign. Scott, very glad you could be here with us to talk about this. It's a big project to overhaul a website like the city's. I want to start by asking you, how long has it been since the city did an update like this?
Hi, Autumn. Yeah, it's been quite a long time, actually. It's 10 years this month. That we last launched a new version of our website, so February 2013. We've had plans to redesign and re-implement it earlier than that, but of course the pandemic kind of got in the way and the priority shifted to getting information out on what we had.
Makes sense. So what's involved in a redesign project like this? Are we talking just a new look for the website, some new functionality, or like a total rebuild from the ground up?
In this case, for us right now, it's really a rebuild of the whole thing. It includes a shift in the technology that we use, includes a change in our processes and governance, kind of the behind the scenes aspects. And also, obviously, the look and feel, the design, the vision of the website and sort of what it means. We're really trying to streamline the content to make it as useful as possible to the public.
So it sounds like sort of really working on a public-facing website, something that takes into account public needs first over sort of city needs. So it sounds like a big job. I know we've called on some outside experts for this project. Other than help with the massive workload of rebuilding, what expertise do they bring to something like this?
Well, our partner, GHD, is the name of the company. They bring years and years of working with city websites, specifically in Canada and Ontario, years and years of that process improvement, years of understanding what the public generally needs out of a municipal website. And arguably the most important thing is what don't they need or what they don't need, right? There's a lot of stuff that kind of gets put onto websites that's really not that helpful to the public at times. So they kind of bring that experience and credibility to the picture so that we don't have to discover all of this ourselves. Really makes things a lot faster.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, we've done one website update in the last decade. They've done how many, right?
2 this week.
Right. So I assume, the needs of the city of Kingston are specific, but the needs of municipalities are probably somewhat general across the board. Is that sort of the experience you find with them? Or?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we have, at any particular point in time, we're going to have different priorities in other municipalities and different projects on the go and things that people really need to know about. We share a lot of the similar services, though, that other cities offer. And there's some universality to that where, the public doesn't always know the inner workings of the city. We need to kind of translate what we're presenting to them in a way that they understand how to get service, they know where to go without making them think too much.
Fair to say, too, that maybe the city doesn't always understand what the public needs from the website either. I guess that's where a third party can bring some of that clarity. Yeah,
exactly. And a big part of that is kind of the approach. So there's like the end result of the web redesign is a product and kind of its own thing, but how you actually get there, that's also a big kind of piece of the magic of how you make what people need actually come to reality. And that's a big piece of what they offer is kind of that expertise in the process of getting there.
That's great. We'll come back to that piece in a minute. I just want to ask about, so anytime that you renovate or rebuild or reconstruct, there's this opportunity to make substantial improvements. Obviously, this feels like a bit of a major opportunity. What are you most excited about? You've worked with this website for a while, so what to you is the most exciting thing about this rebuild that we're bringing on?
I think the idea that so the city has about 30 websites overall. 30. So there's applications, there's a mix of things. The current city website, the main one that most people would think of as the city website, has in the past tried to be a bit too much of all things to everybody. So we're really trying to streamline the focus around, simpler content, fully accessible content, relevant content, things that are actionable to folks. That's really what I get excited about, is kind of being able to see what, the right platforms kind of being used for the right purposes.
Right.
And we're taking a systematic, strategic approach to that to really help deliver what people want.
Yeah, and I guess we've got a decade now of seeing how the previous website worked, so sort of fine-tuning how that fits into the broader city structure. This is a good opportunity for that. So just to go back to the old website for a minute, 10 years with one website is a long time. Just throwing my mind back to 2013. Barack Obama just started his second term in office. Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto. Apple had released the iPhone 5S, and Twitter only allowed 140 characters. And I was still using a BlackBerry Curve with a physical keyboard while wrapping up my final year at Loyalist College. Let's go Lancers. Presumably, a lot has changed in the world of website best practice. So what are some of the things that we have to consider that we didn't have to consider 10 years ago? What's changed in the last decade, really?
Probably the biggest thing, obviously there's technology shifts, and kind of related to that is people's expectations have shifted, and that's probably the biggest piece that we've recognized. People are on their mobile devices a lot more, so small screens, medium screens, everything kind of in between. We have to design for that. We have to design for the fact that people generally don't read an article from top to bottom to get all the information. They're really there to skim and get to what they need as quickly as possible. So a lot of the stuff that we're really focused on is really understanding the user, and in our opinion, the shifts is really around user expectation, what they expect from a government agency to deliver. Mm-hmm. They expect today it's not much different than their best experience anywhere. They want us to be able to deliver those kinds of experiences. So those are the biggest shifts.
And across whatever device or platform they're using, like you mentioned the mobile design, that's really interesting because a decade ago, mobile websites were kind of an afterthought, but now, I've seen the stats. Most people accessing our site are on a mobile device of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to change. I mean, there's voice, interactive, digital assistants, and so there's going to be different variety of ways for people to communicate in the future. So the simpler the content is today, the easier it'll be for us to adapt in the future to whatever comes.
Right. And so we're using some of that data from our current site and our current experience in that development process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have quite a rich complement of data that shows which sections of the website are the most used. The language level, for example, so the reading level, is it right? So, some of the problems with a government agency is that some of the topics are quite complicated, legalistic, and so, that kind of skews things a little bit. But in those areas where we can control the content, we really want to make it as simplified as possible.
I feel like it's always a process of improving. You're always trying to make it easier. You might not ever get to a point where everybody can understand everything, but that should be the goal.
Exactly. Everybody that comes to the website should be able to at least know where to go next.
Right.
So if you can't find it right then and now, what's my next step?
That makes sense, yeah. So then I guess speaking of the user experience overall, how are we bringing the voice of the user into the design and the experience of this new website?
So first is just shifting the culture a little bit to think that way. That's not always how we think in a bureaucratic organization. There's a lot of things that are going on day to day, and that's what people are kind of bringing to their work. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece is really engaging the user community in the actual, if not the design work itself, in the validation of those design pieces. So an example is, the navigation or the menuing systems that are on most websites. There's a structure to them. There's categories and labels and words that help people find what they need. So that piece of work, we can develop that and have real users that are part of the community test it. We can ask them where would you find such and such in this structure.
Right.
And so we've done that, and we had some really great success over the last month with Jen Panarski and her team. Kind of blew the doors off the engagement levels that our partner, they'd never seen such engagement. So we had way over 300 participants in a survey. So that helps, inform us that this structure, if most people can find what they need to the first time, without a whole lot of backtracking across the categories, lets us know that we're on the right track before we actually build anything. That's the kind of stuff that we really want to get into early on.
Right.
And then longer term, we're going to be issuing ongoing satisfaction surveys to the public. It's one thing to kind of know a design is a good idea, or that people are going here, a specific area of your website, where they're going.
Right.
What we really are missing, and have been missing for quite a while, is the opinion surveys to tell us what they think about it. It's one thing to be able to, it's just one piece of the puzzle that we've been missing, and so that's kind of an approach we want to take going forward.
Well, I think any designer would agree that you put together a design for whatever it is that you're designing, and you put it out into the public, and you see how it's used, and sometimes it's used in unexpected ways, and that kind of feedback looping back into the city to help us improve the product as it goes on. So would that feedback be sort of ongoing throughout the life cycle of the next website?
Yeah, that's our intention. We'd really like to be able to keep this version of the site as closely aligned to what people need throughout its life cycle, by issuing these surveys, identifying the problem spots before they become really big problem spots. And ideally, if we can avoid these really significant upgrades and just kind of keep that curve a bit flatter so that it's never deviating too far from expectation, then I think it'll be, making people happier in the long run, which is really what it's about.
Continual improvement. So I wanted to talk about accessibility for a minute. I work in communications, and we often work with your team to get content on the website to make sure that everybody in the community has access to the information. And we know there's a requirement internally to make sure that anything that goes up is accessible to people of all abilities. So, language, but also that it reads easily, that images have alt text to support screen readers, that PDFs are used rarely, and that when they are, they're prepped for screen readers. So how are we building a site that, and I know the accessibility component in our current website has sort of been added on over the years as elements of legislation have changed. But starting with a new site, how are we building that accessibility in from the ground floor up?
So this kind of touches a bit on our content strategy, which is really to emphasize, what we would call core web content as the primary media that new information gets delivered. So that's just, anybody who's kind of technical out there, HTML, it's kind of standard web language versus a standalone PDF document.
Right.
And why this is valuable is because, both can be made accessible, but when you're working in the native kind of web tools, you have more options for templates that are kind of universal that can be applied to all content. And so if there's something in your website that it may not be the best accessible feature, you can change it in one place and have it kind of reflected everywhere.
Right.
Versus going to have to update, 100 PDF documents that were created.
And take up the Word document.
Well, and then the PDF itself, again, it's not a bad technology. It's just that it's kind of the end of the road for a whole publishing workflow.
Right.
And there's only certain things you can do with that PDF. And if it's an inherently inaccessible design, you'd actually have to go back to the source document, the Word document, or whatever was created initially. You don't always have access to that. No. And so there's a whole life cycle that has to be managed as well. And so that's one of the biggest things that we're looking at doing. It's a great opportunity to really improve things for everybody. I mean, that's one of the common themes that I've learned in my journey through learning about accessibility is a lot of the technology we use every day overall, like across the whole population, was developed initially to solve a specific issue for people with disabilities, and they just turns out they work well for everybody.
It's amazing how when you sort of reduce barriers for everybody, it makes it easier for everybody. I mean, it sounds so simple when you say it that way, but it is a mindset difference, and it is a bit of a culture shift. So, good luck. So I guess the big question then that it would be on everybody's mind is when's the site going to be online? Not to put too much pressure on you.
No, it's so there's a few things kind of at play. There's two projects running in parallel, but right now we're tracking towards an end of the year launch. Depending on what happens, that could happen, but there is a chance that it goes into the new year, into Q1 2024. The team, we have a steering committee that kind of guides us, and we all are on the same page in the sense that we want to get it right. We don't want to deliver something prematurely or that is lacking in some way. So it's more important for us to get it right and validate what we're doing with the public before we go live. And
better to take your time than to find out 6 months after launch that we need to redo huge sections of it, eh?
Well, exactly. And we may be, there may be decisions where we go live with the new site, but a section of the old site is alive for a little period of time. But what we don't want to have happen is going live and missing something completely.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, well, that's great. Thank you so much for all your time today. Before I let you go, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that we should cover? Anything you want to reiterate?
No, I don't think so.
That's great.
We're good.
Thank you. Well, friends, that's our show. Hope you've enjoyed it and maybe learned something. Watch out for a new CityOfKingston.ca in the future. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this podcast, consider rating us or subscribing. Ratings help us reach a wider audience, and following or subscribing means you won't miss new episodes. Have an episode topic you'd like us to tell you more about? We're always happy to receive mail. Send us a note by emailing podcasts@cityofkingston.ca or find us on social media. Until next month, stay well.
Tommy Moore is produced by the City of Kingston's Communications and Customer Experience team.